I was asked recently about comments that I've made in other videos where I say that I don't think that the Warlord would really work well in 5th edition. So I wanted to expound on that a bit. If you know me, or if you've watched all my videos, then you probably know me. Then you know that the Warlord is my favorite class. I love the Warlord. I think the Warlord is a masterclass of design in ways that we haven't really seen before or since in role-playing games. It speaks to me on a level that no other character archetype in any other RPG ever has. I love the Warlord. But there have been a number of attempts to port the Warlord into 5th edition. Attempts that have varying degrees of success. And I don't want to talk about any specific attempt. I in fact, I made a class, I actually called it the Leader, because I didn't want to make it a direct one-to-one analog. Plus, I like to have classes that aren't specifically like 100% combat-oriented, although sometimes they end up being like 90% combat oriented. And I think the term Warlord might be a bit misleading in that regard, because it really makes it sound like you are all about combat. So why do I think that the Warlord wouldn't work in 5th edition? Why don't I think that is not a good thing to even try to do? Why do I think it's always going to fail to some degree? You're not going to achieve the same kind of success, mainly because the Warlord of 4th edition was built to exist in 4th edition. And what do I mean by that? I mean that it's a character class that exists conceptually to take advantage of 4th edition's really comprehensive, extensive systems that encourage teamwork. It encourages, or it treats all characters equally. For example, let me give you some examples here. In 4th edition, weapon attacks and spells are both powers. They're just powers. And they both make attack rolls, they both make damage rolls, etc. Which is why the 4th edition Warlord is able to interact with both weapon users and spellcasters. So it doesn't matter as much, which is not to say it doesn't matter at all, but it doesn't matter as much what the rest of your team composition is. The Warlord is still going to be able to interact with their team's stuff. I'm still going to be able to give you bonuses to hit. I'm still going to be able to give you bonuses to damage. I'm still going to be able to defend you. I'm still going to be able to heal you. I'm going to be able to support you in the normal, predictable ways, regardless of what it is that you are doing. Whereas in 5th edition, spells and weapon attacks are fully different things with different mechanics and different terminology. So in order to have an ability that affects both equally, it really complicates the ability. Because you have to say, like let's say you wanted to give someone a +2, or what would be a +2 to attack in 4th edition. In 5th edition, that would be a +2 on attack rolls, and the save DCs of your spells and abilities is increased by 2 as well. Which, of course, those two things are not even equal, because we know that things that require saves, primarily spells, are a lot more powerful than just attack rolls. Because attack rolls almost, sometimes they'll have extra rider effects, but for the most part, they're just doing damage. Spells are probably winning the game for you, winning the fight. So those two things aren't even equivalent. You wouldn't even want them to work the same way. So the fact that some classes have resources and features and other classes don't means the Warlord is sitting there thinking well, I have to have a separate ability for each type of ally that I'm trying to support, And so that makes the Warlord very, very complicated and far less intuitive than it was in 4th edition. The other thing is that I've spoken before on mechanical hooks. This is a term that I like to use to refer to the sort of general features of the system, things that are assumable for all characters. Perfect example in 4th edition is the action points and healing surges. Great mechanical hooks that the Warlord can now take advantage of. Is when you spend an action point, I'm going to give you a bonus. When you are, I can trigger your healing surges as part of my turn. These are aspects, they're mechanical aspects that the Warlord is able to take advantage of and really like play around with. And it's the toys that they use to make their little like toy castle. And like, oh, look at the great thing that I did. In 5th edition, there are no blocks. You can't make your toy castle. There's no blocks. You have to sort of cut out a big castle picture and say, well, this is my castle. It's all one piece because I've had to write all of the abilities from scratch. This is an issue that I came across when I was building my my barbarian and my rogue. I noticed that every single special ability that I wanted to give them had to be written from scratch. Because there's so little there. Like the 5th edition, if you're not casting spells, is so bare bones. It's a barren system. It's flat and it's uninteresting. And so every interesting ability that you want to give a character has to be written from scratch. You have to make up the whole thing. There's nothing for you to build on or attach to. There's no hooks, and so that I think is a huge obstacle for the Warlord to be ported to 5th edition. The other big thing is healing, non-magical healing, which is it's difficult because the paradigm of healing is that they should all be daily abilities, so you never get infinite healing, and it's pretty limited. Like combat healing is not a thing in 5th edition, and out of combat healing it doesn't feel the same. The Warlord. If done properly, the Warlord should feel like they are doing combat healing. I am rescuing my allies, encouraging them to stand up despite their injuries. But it's really hard to do that in 5th edition because there are no examples of combat healing being effective. So you're not left with a lot to work with. Now you could make it a combat healer. You could say like, okay, well that's going to be the Warlord's thing. It heals in combat. No other class does that, so that's its niche. The issue that you run into with that is then, what benefit is there of other healing abilities? And also, of course, there's the usual drawback of like, well, I'm really good at this thing that no one else is good at. And so a lot of DMs and a lot of tables and a lot of Redditors are going to look at that and say, well, that's clearly overpowered. Because the cleric can't do it, the druid can't do it, the wizard can't do it, therefore it should not be able to be done. I mean, they won't say it like that, but that's, I think, what it really boils down to. Is like, the classes that can do anything can't do that, so it shouldn't be able to be done. I want to say I have had conversations like that before. It is a real thing that you run into. That there is no niche that should exist that can't be covered by full casters. So you can't or arguably shouldn't do combat healing. Supporting allies is very difficult and very complicated. There's no mechanical hooks for you to like sort of grab onto and support your allies through them. The 4th edition Warlord expands on the system that it exists in, the system that it was created for, the system that it was designed to emphasize. It's sort of it's not archetypal, it's like a quintessential 4th edition class. And so I don't think there's any way to port it to 5th edition and make it feel faithful to the original. I don't think it can be done, and I'm not sure that it should be done. Because 5th edition is such a flat system, if you're not using spells, that like it wouldn't be worth the effort for sure. And even if you do go through all the effort, what you're probably going to end up left with is something that's sort of a fighter, sort of like fifth edition martial type classes tend to be very samey, like they feel very samey, don't they? Like the ranger is just a fighter druid, the paladin is just a fighter cleric, you know, these hybrid classes. And so this, I feel like, would probably end up feeling like a sort of fighter bard, or, you know, like maybe probably a fighter bard is sort of the feel that you're probably going to end up getting close to, because, you know, you're going to have some sort of like inspiration mechanic that is going to be directly compared to not inspiring word, but bardic inspiration. You know, that's going to happen regardless of what it looks like mechanically. That's going to be a comparison that people make. Yeah, you can't have it be as powerful as the 4th edition Warlord, because people would cry about that. This is a non-spellcaster doing, you know, cool stuff. Can't have that. And so, I mean, that's sort of a separate difficulty, isn't it? You can't have a class that is like really deep and interesting if it's not casting spells, because people will call it overpowered. So are you making this class for just yourself, or are you making it for public consumption? If you're making it for public consumption, you have to deal with the naysayers who are emphatically wrong, but everywhere. And so that, I think, would probably sabotage any genuine attempt to make the Warlord. But that's political stuff, and I don't really like dealing with gamer politics. I don't really consider that usually like part of the design. So I'm willing to discount that and just point at the fact that 5th edition isn't a system that is designed to have a lot of teamwork. It's not designed to have someone who's like full on support. You can do it, but it's usually quite bad. And it's hard to write, and it's hard to do well, and hard to make it feel satisfying in the ways that the Warlord often is. The 4th edition's still around. You still play it. I'm gonna still play it. You can't stop me. Anyways, yeah, I don't think the Warlord can exist in 5th edition in really the same kind of satisfying, delightful way that it does in 4th. And I don't think it ever will.